matters not from whence the blood flows, only that it flows.
How's it going, guys? Running it back with another replay for you, and it's going to be a showdown on the Graveyard of Altdorf, which is a really fun map, one of my favorites in the game, one that you don't see played super often, which is a bit of a shame. I think that there's some real chops to this one. It was a little bit less fun to play on in the past, but it did get an update from the map creator, and ever since then, with the positioning of all of the terrain pieces, I actually think that there's some really fun stuff that you can do on this map. So, just jumping in here, there's some Goblin Wolf Riders out here, Morgarb's Mangy Marauders amongst them, just a big fat wall line, Orc Boys and Air Boys here, and Night Goblins out here on the #1 objective. 3 of them, which is a pretty aggressive opening to play for all 3 objectives and get that early lead, which I kind of like, honestly. My build is going to be Valkia up in the sky, just the best lord out of all of them on the Khorne roster, and going to be bringing something a little different, bringing 2 Blood Crushers here, one of them being the ROR and just a regular Blood Crusher in the opening as well. And these guys are great at wrecking infantry builds, and they're not meta by any means, and are kind of weak in a lot of matchups, but I brought them here because they're great against infantry heavy factions. And if there's one faction that just loves bringing, you know, like kind of low quality infantry, Orc Boys are very cost effective, but they're very inexpensive, and they can get run over by units like Blood Crushers. So I wanted to see how they could measure up here in this matchup. Also, having the magic attacks means they can get through Savage Orc Boy physical resist, which is usually a staple that you see in this matchup, is a lot of Savage Orcs, but my opponent just going a lot cheaper and a little bit wider than would be if he had brought the Air Boys. Jumping on top of these Wolf Riders with Valkia, getting a little bit of damage there, and springing my ambush, the Goblin Wolf Riders get a little too close to my hounds that were hiding in this forest here, and are getting absolutely smacked down, while Heralds of Khorne's Fury running in up top here, smacking into these other 2 Wolf Rider Archer units. Mangy Marauders taking the worst of the casualties so far, and just getting absolutely smacked up by these elite units. And up to 40 kills, and that's really important because Hellblade gives these guys a massive boost in their damage potential, and especially for the Heralds, because they do have flaming attacks in addition to the magic damage, and give a weakness to fire debuff and lowers melee defense. So these guys hit really hard once they get Hellblade up, and it's almost active on these guys. So really nice for me. Capturing the middle here. Gonna capture the #3 objective here in a moment, since I have basically crushed the Skirmisher Corps. Using some Furies, gonna chase down these Goblin Wolf Riders out here on the edge, make sure they don't rally and don't just recap this objective from me in a moment, and really laughing and profiting right now. Pretty good value on both of these units, 300 and 400 respectively, and just getting ready for this big fight in the middle. There is a lot being developed out here on the field in the middle, some Minotaurs on my end, not surprising to see the Orc Boarboy Biggins. Some Bloodletters sneaking into the woods here, which is a great idea for a armor-piercing infantry unit like this, especially one that's very vulnerable to missiles. Missiles have a very hard time hitting when something's in forests. If they're not outright getting blocked by trees, the accuracy is just significantly lowered when firing into or inside of forests in general. So these guys are going to perform very well, and it's going to make it hard for the Biggins to get in there and do the work they normally could do against a unit that's pretty squishy to shock damage. These guys do have really good AP, and they get through the low melee defense of these Biggin cavalry pretty well, so really liking the positioning of these guys. And the Marauders are just going to take a fight here, there in the middle, while this Marauder unit and the Blood Crushers just flattening these Night Goblins, and about to get up to Hellblade on these Blood Crushers and getting me some army ability charges. Gonna be using that over here in this fight in just a moment. About to pop it off, and there you go. Really good boost to combat prowess for my pretty cheap infantry units. Certainly going to help take down these orc boys and the arrow boys as well, which are very important to get rid of in this matchup. You cannot have missiles just firing freely at you all game. It's going to tear you apart. I am taking the number 3 objective, but I did lose my Chaos Warhounds. They just got smacked up by these Biggin cavalry, flattening them on the charge, and the good armor that these guys have, mitigating most of the damage that could come in from those. So good intercept from my opponent on the edge there. I am pulling a nice value lead, though, and even though the Savage Boar Boy Biggins back here are in on my Blood Crushers, they are also fighting Minotaurs. They had some Marauders buffering the worst of the charge damage there. So, maybe not the most amazing trade in the world for me, but killing this unit, these guys do add up over the course of a game. And just leaving them to route slowly off the edge of the map. This is a pretty big map, so they're not going to be able to just get unsummoned now that they're shattered. Going to be really nice for me to, you know, give my Minotaurs and other forces a bit of a free rein for now. Fury's getting intercepted by more Orc Biggin cavalry. Very unfortunate for me, but the Bloodletters are doing great. Up to 75 kills, 500 value. And the Minotaurs, man, another unit of them rushing in here, getting on top of an isolated pocket of the Biggins, absolutely smacking them into the Shadow Realm. And not taking too much damage in return, and certainly going to be helped by the Bloodletters here, who are also getting good work done. And as you can see across the battlefield, man, getting a lot of nice isolations on a lot of these greenskin units. The Blood Crushers proving to be an absolute menace, being very difficult to deal with, and my opponent being baited into overextending with his Biggin cavalry so far, and really punishing those guys pretty effectively, while this one out here is resecuring the number 3 objective. And I'm just trying to get rid of the archers now. There's a lot of very squishy infantry units that are very exposed at this point. The Swamp Things coming out, they're a very decent unit, but if I can get the Blood Crushers on top of them with some Minotaurs and the like, those guys are really not going to be liking that combat. So, gonna need to be sending and rerouting over there shortly to help out my Bloodletters, who are getting some good uses out of the Horn of Corn. Just a huge spike in combat prowess, like I said earlier, and just making rain for me, man, all day. Minotaurs getting on top of another Goblin Wolf Rider unit, smacking into them, massacring them in droves, while the Heralds of Khorne's Fury up to 1,300 value, tons of room to spare on health, and just getting tons and tons of kills here, charging up my army abilities for days. And being the menace that I know that they can be. These guys are just proving that they might have a niche in this matchup, quite honestly. And a Sword of Khorne coming in. Normally, if you're using as many army abilities as I have, you're not going to be seeing this thing coming out too often. But just the sheer weight of attacks and the number of greenskins that I've killed so far, proving to be an absolute boon for me up to this point. And really loving the position I'm in right now. I do have a value lead. My opponent is doing a great job of countercharging my Heralds here, but I'm pulling them out of combat while my other Blood Crushers and Minotaurs come in and give just a huge charge back in return, doing a lot of damage on top of these Savage Orc Biggins and the Swamp Things, getting isolated. With Valkia chipping some good damage in here, also taking a little bit of damage from the Bloodletters, and gonna maneuver the Heralds over to charge these guys down in just a moment, giving myself a bit of a cushion, taking out a lot of those scarier pieces that the Greenskins have in response to my Minotaurs and the like, and maybe allowing me in the late game to be able to just stay in it and keep measuring up well against these guys. Tattered greenskin forces all over the battlefield. Some of them a little disorganized, not quite able to contribute to the battle quite yet. But still, not the most amazing position for me. I certainly have not won this game by any means. The greenskins are just so cost-effective. More Orc Boar Boy Biggin cavalry coming out onto the field, ready for another round, trying to get away with these Minotaurs. But these guys are incredibly quick, the Biggin Cavalry, so I just pop Relentless Rage, and I'm gonna let the Minotaurs do as much as they can to grind value while this ability is active, and they do have 9 models left, and none of them are gonna die and are unbreakable while this ability is going off. A good side charge from this other Minotaur unit, gonna get some good value on them as well, and really chipping down these Biggin Cavalry, doing really nice work. This Minotaur is breaking, and these Minotaurs aren't going to be able to measure up with the Wolf Rider archers coming in here to buffer a bit, but Valkia landing, she's going to contribute some good attacks in here as well, and I am just barely able to rout these guys off, while the Minotaurs taking a little bit of missile fire and are also going to be going down. My opponent been really on point with the magic so far. Not a lot of value, per se, on the Goblin Great Shaman, but Gorkle Fix It and Sneaky Stabbin' have been going off every single opportunity that my opponent has been able to cast them, which is really, really solid micro from him. He's just not really, unfortunately, had enough answers to the sheer weight of large targets that I've brought. I'm just overwhelming the Orc Biggins on their piggies, and giving a good accounting for these very expensive elites that I'm bringing out onto the field. Good collapse with the Hounds of the Blood Hunt going in here. They are going to take a bit of extra damage from the Biggins here. They do have Gore Feast, though, which going into a more prolonged engagement is going to serve them very well and make it a little bit more difficult for the Greenskin forces to chip them down, especially with Horn of Corn going down. I really just wanted to win this fight quickly. I do very much need to capture the number 3 objective here, and this is the perfect opportunity. I've got the number 2 here. I'm not down by too terribly much. I'm getting the number 1, and the number 3 is going to be flipping over to me in just a moment. If I can hold on to all 3 objectives and start getting a really nice value lead, it's going to be very brutal for the Greenskins to grind back into this game. Minotaurs and Blood Crushers fighting from out of the forest and jumping on top of these Rusty Errors, who have been doing some pretty good work. They've gotten quite a few volleys off, lowering the armor on all of my units, but I'm not going to overextend. There is a fresh Boarboy Biggin Cavalry here. Just going to retreat back into the woods and keep the missile fire from doing as much damage as it normally could. As you can see, quite a few arrows getting stopped up by the woods, and quite a few missing. Few hitting and still centering the armor, but it's not too bad for me. And man, Minotaurs, once Blood Greed is online, it's pretty nasty. I mean, the stats that they get, I mean, this is with absolutely nothing else going on. Just with their Frenzy and Blood Greed and the Chevrons active, these guys are absolutely filthy, and there's 12 models left. I do believe I have a Relentless Rage available, so unsummoning these guys would be on the table if I didn't have the Relentless Rage army ability on tap. But with that, they're going to be excellent at just going in, taking what would traditionally be a losing fight and just absolutely stomping something. It's really one of the best army abilities for Khorne. In my opinion, giving me, you know, a good chance to do some effective damage. Now, some rallying Wolf Rider archers and Night Goblins were able to deal with my Hound pressure on the number 1. So, gonna send a Marauder with some Fury support to recapture that. And the number 3 is very secure. Hounds the Blood Hunt posted up on the hill here. Gonna decide where to go with them in just a moment. Looks like I'm gonna be taking them to the middle. This is a bit of a surprise, a blast from the past. I played this about a week ago, so I don't remember everything that happened, but still have a pretty good idea of what went down in this battle. And just to take a bit of a halftime look at things, you know, it's pretty good value across the board on these Blood Crushers, man. And just the sheer number of, actually almost perfectly mirrored. 259 on these guys, 286 on this unit. And 179 from the Minotaurs with great weapons. Great weapon Minotaurs are actually really good against infantry on the charge, and once they get Blood Greed up, they can just absolutely mulch through infantry units in the late game. Some Bloodletters maneuvering on the flank, back in the forest, a fresh unit, and it's just really nice to be able to play out of these forests on this map with the Bloodletters. perfect position for them to fight from. They are overextending a little bit here, but not too afraid because it is giving me a chance to dive in here with the Heralds of Khorne's Fury and these Bloodletters, getting some nice damage on this isolated unit. And they're certainly not going to be long for this world. Charging up my army abilities yet again. And gonna just jump right in here with the Minotaurs on top of the Rusty Arrows, and a Sleipnir coming in, absolutely one-shotting these guys. Really, really worthwhile to hang on to Sleipnir into the late game sometimes. I got one good cast out of it in the forest here, killing some arrow boys, and getting on top of these Rusty Arrows in the late game. Smacking down that unit, which is a very important piece for the Greenskins here. And they're losing the Swamp Things yet again. These guys have gotten pretty decent value, but certainly not able to hold up for long against the relentlessness that I'm applying here with the Bloodletters, Bloodcrushers, and Marauders, just stuffing the Greenskins out of the middle here, and getting some really nice fights for myself. Marauders holding on the number 1, nothing crazy going on out there. Squig Hoppers attacking the Bloodletters, getting some good value, but countercharged by the Furies, who have pushed these guys off and done great work against them. Trying to make sure that the Swamp Things don't come back, just hovering overhead. There are still 6 models. They can do some pretty good work, but needing them to collapse in here on these Orc boys and get some nice work done against them. Furies are just really great at killing infantry targets. Good countercharge from my opponent, getting on top of those Furies and doing a lot of damage to them. Unfortunately for him, these Orc Boarboy Biggins not quite able to get the job done, man. Really getting isolated and just fighting so many different targets. I mean, Heralds of Khorne's Fury, Bloodcrushers, and Bloodletters and Marauders. Valkia on top of them too. And now the Goblin Great Shaman's in a very tricky situation. Pushed into a corner by the Hounds of the Blood Hunt, who are doing a little bit of chip damage against him. And Valkia on top of this guy as well. Looking really nice for me to maybe be able to get rid of him. My opponent grinding the value back slowly but surely here. Bloodletters dissipating here, but more coming up in reserve with some Marauders, and the Bloodcrushers just holding until the absolute 4th quarter, making it work for me, and just continuing to grind out value. Heralds very much paying for themselves, these other guys just barely making it happen, but the sheer numbers that they've managed to remove from the field for me has been really nice. Another Horn of Khorne going down just all day from these Horns of Khorne. And the Bloodletters certainly going to be able to punch back against the Biggins that are charging in here, and the Squig Hoppers. Going to be a little difficult for Valkia to finish off this Goblin Great Shaman with all the buffering in here, though. But she is fighting a lot of really nice targets. The Squig Hoppers being the only thing that's a genuine threat to her. Her melee defense is really solid, and she just does so much effective damage to units like this that I'm not too worried. And all of these units have held until the cavalry comes in, or I should say the Corntaurs. Flattening in here. Bloodgreed fully charged from their last go-around, so they're just at an absolute maximum of potential here, and really lancing in here, crushing the Squig Hoppers, who are routing now, Orc Boys routing, Tattered Boarboy Biggins routing now, and just a mass collapse of the Greenskin forces at this stage of the game. Grinding back a decent amount of value, and the Marauders just sitting here. They've been taking some arrow fire, fighting off some Goblin Wolf Riders, and ready for another round. I do have the triple cap. It's been going for quite a while now. My opponent making some desperation plays in the 4th quarter here. Although it was a good call to try and break me in the middle here. It didn't end up panning out, and he very much kind of sacrificed the ability to influence the battlefield elsewhere. And that's pretty much going to be game here. Going to be able to just barely hold on to these objectives, and just trading evenly with the Hounds and the Marauders, holding against the forces, the Greenskins, on that number 1. And I'm just going to show off the values here, man. Really well played by Toxic Cows there. Doing a really good job of scrapping back in the late game there. Unfortunately for him, this very infantry-heavy build that he brought really just got flattened by the BloodCrushers. There weren't enough answers to them in the early going, and I was able to buffer out and draw in enough of his answers into bad engagements to ultimately be able to really dictate the pace of the game. Going into the mid game there, he didn't have enough on the field to really challenge me on the flank points, and then committing into the middle to try and break the forces I did have. Not quite going the way I think he expected, just because of the sheer number of Relentless Rages, Horns of Corn. Sword of Corn went in there and karate chapped one of his Error Boy units. Just all of his army abilities, swinging it for me in the late game and helping me maintain out on the field. I really do think that that's probably the way to play against Greenskins. Don't fluff about with bringing Marauder Horsemen and the like. They get countered pretty hard even by the kind of trashy Wolf Rider archers. And, I think my opponent was expecting a lot of Marauder Horsemen just by the sheer number of missiles that he brought in. So, having the BloodCrushers in response to get rid of the infantry chaff and then get into the squishier parts of my opponent's army served me really well. And, yeah, I think I'm going to call it there. Been talking pretty non-stop for this one, but it was just an absolute grind. And luckily able to secure that into the late game. So, GG's, peace. I'll catch you guys in the next one.